Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be making a shift dress. So I'm going to be trying to recreate this particular one I've been seeing online. And the second I got my hands on this fabric, I just knew it would be a fun project, so I decided to make one for myself. So if you want to see how I made this, make sure to stay to the end and let's get started. So I'll begin by folding my fabric along the length. This is the first folding, then I'm going to fold it again. So right now my fabric is on a double fold. When doing this, make sure the width is wide enough to accommodate a quarter of your hip circumference plus 2 to 3 inches. So now that I'm done with that, I'll go ahead to start marking out my measurements. And I'll begin by coming down by 1 inch from the top of my fabric. I'll go ahead and mark that point across, then bring in my ruler to square that out, and that line will be my start line. I'm sorry if the chalk marks are not really clear. I just really didn't want to use a pattern paper for this, and I prefer to work directly on my fabric. Now from that start line, I'll be marking out the rest of my horizontal measurements, and I'll be starting with my shoulder to waist measurements at 15 inches. I'm marking a point across, after which I'll go in with my ruler to square it out, and that will become my waistline. After marking out my waistline, I'll go on to measure out the full length of this dress. So go on and measure out where you want the dress to stop on yourself. I decided to go with 38 inches plus 1 inch for hemming allowance, which is 39 inches. So from the shoulder line, I'm going down by 39 inches, marking that point across. Then I'll bring in my ruler again to square that out, and that will be the full length of my dress. Okay, so now that I have my full length, I'll be going back to the shoulder line to create my neckline. For the neck width, I'll be using 3.5 inches. While for the neck depth, I'm starting with the back and I'll be using 1.5 inches. So I'm coming down from that folded end by 1.5. Then I'll go in with my French curve to connect the 2 points together to create the back neckline. So I'm creating the back neckline first because I'll be cutting out the back piece. Then I'll remove that before I create the front. So after creating the neckline, I'll be moving on to mark half of my across shoulder measurement along the shoulder line. So I'm coming in by 8.5 inches and I'm marking that along the shoulder line, and from there I'll be going down by 1 inch, and then I'll go on to connect that point back into the neckline to create my shoulder slope. So I used 8.5 inches for half of my across shoulder because the half an inch would be used to join the sleeves to the armhole. So after creating my shoulder slope, I'll be coming down from the end of that slope by 8 inches to mark out my upper chest line. I got this by dividing my bust circumference by 6 and then adding 1.5. So right now I'm just going in with my ruler to extend that line, and when I'm done with that, I'll be measuring out the same 8.5 inches I had along the shoulder line on the upper chest line so that I can connect the 2 points together in a straight line. This is just something that I always do to make sure that my line is straight. Okay, so now that I've connected the 2 points together, I'll go in to mark a quarter of my bust circumference along the upper chest line. So from the center front or center back, I'll be coming in by a quarter of my bust circumference plus half an inch for ease. Now after doing that, I'll be marking the midpoint of this vertical line right here, which is 4 inches, and then I'll connect the point I marked on the upper chest line to that midpoint in a curve to create the back armhole. Now you can use a French curve for this, but this fabric moves a lot, which makes it difficult to draw on. So I decided to create my front armhole as well. So from the midpoint, I came in by half an inch. Then I'm bringing in my French curve to connect the upper chest line to that point to the shoulder slope. If you don't understand what I just said, just pay attention to what I'm doing and you'll get it. So basically, I'm just creating my front armhole. And after doing that, I'll move on to the waistline to mark a quarter of my waist circumference. I'll also be adding half an inch for ease. Now, I forgot to create my hip line earlier, so I'm doing that now. So I'll be coming down from the waistline by 9 inches. I'll mark the point across, then square it out with my ruler, and that will become my hip line. So on this line from the center front, I'll be coming in by a quarter of my hip circumference plus half an inch for ease. Now for the full length, I didn't bother making any measurements on it because I know I'll be cutting it straight down, or if I decided to flare it out, it will be just a little. So I just went on to connect my waistline to the upper chest line, and now I'm connecting the hip line to the waistline. Now before I move on, I'll be adding my side seam allowance, which is 1 inch.
So I'm adding 1 inch along the upper chest line, the waistline, and the hip line. Then I'll go on to connect them as well. After that, I'll move on to the shoulder slope to add 1/2 inch for my joining allowance. And once I've connected those points, I'll just bring in my scissors to cut along the lines. So I'm starting with the neckline, which is the back neckline. Then I'm cutting along the shoulder slope. Then I'll move on to cut out the armhole for the back, and then just cut along the sides following the side seam allowance, and I'll just take that straight down, and finally I'll cut along the hemline. So this is what we have. Now you can leave your dress as it is, but I'll be coming up by 1 inch along the side so that I can make the small curve you see me doing. And once that's done, I'm going to take out the pins so I can remove the back piece and start working on the front. So I've taken out the back piece. Now I'm going to align this again properly so that I can work on the front. Now there's not a lot I have to do here. I simply have to cut out the front armhole and then work on the front neckline. So for the front neckline, I'll start by increasing the neck depth by another 1.5. Remember, for the back, we had a neck depth of 1.5, so adding 1.5 to this will bring the front neck depth to 3 inches. Then I'll just go on to connect it to meet the neck width and cut that out. After which, I'll be coming down along the center front by 4 inches. And once I've marked that, I'll go in with my scissors to open up the center front until I get to that mark. This is just to create that keyhole detail for the front. So after opening it up, this is what it looks like. By the time I use my facing to turn it around, it will be much more visible. So that's it for the front piece. You can see the only difference between the front and back was the armhole and the neckline detail. So now we're moving on to create my sleeves, and I'll be drafting on this pattern paper. So on here, I've already marked my start line, my bicep line, my elbow line, and my wrist. And then this end right here, I will be cutting it on a fold. So from the start line, I came down by 4.5 inches to mark my bicep line. I also marked out my elbow line at 13 inches, and for the full length, I will be using 24 inches. So now from the end I'll be on the fold, I'll be coming in by 4 inches along the start line. I'll go ahead and mark that point, and then I'll be finding the midpoint between the start line and the bicep line. So I'm just folding in my tape to get the midpoint, and after marking that, I'll go on to mark half of my bicep circumference plus the allowance I gave for the side seam, which was a total of 1.5 inches. So I'm just adding 1.5 inches to half of my bicep circumference. And then using my curved ruler, I'll be connecting that point to the midpoint and then to the start line. So I'm bringing in my French curve and I'm connecting the start line to the midpoint. Then I'm going to turn it over to the other side and then connect the midpoint to the point on the bicep line. So now that I've done that, I'll be marking half of my elbow circumference and half of my wrist circumference on the elbow line and the wrist line respectively. And to each of these measurements, I'll be adding the 1.5 inches, which was used as my side seam allowance. Now, after marking all these points, I'll go on to connect them with my straight ruler. So first I'll be connecting the bicep line to the elbow line, then I'll connect the elbow line to the wrist line. And once that's done, I'll go ahead to cut along the lines that I've marked. So now I'll be doing the slash and spread method to get my bell sleeves. So from the parts that will be on a fold, I came in by 2 inches, then came in by another 2 inches. And I'm just going to be using my ruler to take that point up all the way to the top. Then I'll be going in with my scissors to slash along those lines, making sure not to cut it all the way up. Now that I'm done slashing, it's time to spread. So I'll be bringing in the fabric that we used for the sleeves. So this fabric is on a fold. So I'm going to be placing the pattern paper on top of this. I'll go on to pin it down, and once I've aligned them properly, I'll decide on how much I'm going to be spreading. So I decided on 2.5. You can do more if you want a wider sleeve. So from the first end, I marked 2.5. Now I'm pinning the second one. And from that second one, I'll be spreading by another 2.5. I'll go on to mark that and then pin the third one. So I'll just go in with my tape to check that I spread it out evenly. Then I'll be going in with my scissors to cut around the shape of the spread. You can see that I gave 1/2 inch allowance at the top that will be used to join the sleeves to the armhole. So yeah, this is what the sleeve is looking like, and I'll be using this to cut out the second pair. So now that I'm done cutting my sleeves, it's time to cut out the facing that will be used to turn the neckline for the back and for the front. So I'm starting with the back neckline. I put my piece on a fold. I'm just going to place the neckline on top of this,
pin it down, make sure it's aligned, and then cut following the shape of the back neckline. I'll do the same for the front neckline as well. The fabric piece is also on a fold, and I'm placing the front piece on top of it, making sure it's aligned. And I'll go ahead and pin it down and then cut along the neckline for the front. So I'm cutting following the shape of the front neckline. I'll also be slashing open the center front of the fabric piece as well. And once that's done, I have all my pieces ready and it's time to start stitching. And I'll begin by turning the neckline for the front and back. So this is the back piece and I'm placing the back facing to the back neckline, right sides facing each other. I'll go ahead to pin this down and then sew following the shape of the neckline. Then I'll flip it over and create a top stitch on the facing fabric. So I'm going to do the same for the front piece. I'll be bringing in the facing and placing it to the front piece, right sides facing each other. Now you have to make sure this is matched properly so that when stitching you won't run into any problems. So once I've done that, I'll go ahead to pin it down so it stays in place. And then I'll be taking this to the machine to stitch following the shape of the front neckline. So I've gone ahead to do that. This is the back piece and I turned the neckline using the facing and here's what we have. You can see how neat that looks. And I did the exact same thing for the front neckline as well. When doing this for the front, make sure to be patient and take your time so that it comes out exactly the way you want it to. And you can see that now that I've turned the neckline with the facing, that keyhole detail is more visible. So now I'm going to be placing the back piece to the front piece like this, right sides facing each other, and I'll be joining them together along the shoulder line. So I'm going to be opening up the shoulder slope of the main piece and the shoulder slope of the facing fabric and joining them together. I'll go ahead and pin this down so that when I take it to the machine, I'll just run one straight stitch to join all the pieces together, and I'll do the same thing for the other side as well. So make sure you're placing the right side of the front shoulder slope to the right side of the back shoulder slope and the right side of the front facing to the right side of the back facing. And once I've stitched the shoulder slope together, I'll be bringing in my sleeves and I'll be attaching the sleeves to each armhole. And I'll be doing that using a 1/2 inch sewing allowance. Once I've attached the sleeves, I'll go on to join the front and back pieces together using a 1-inch sewing allowance. And after stitching down the sides, of course, the next thing to do is to hem the dress. So I'll be creating a double fold along the hemline and I'll stitch all the way around. Now this dress I'm trying to recreate has feathers attached to the sleeves and I searched for them everywhere but I couldn't find it. And this is the kind I have with me and I really did not want to add this to the dress. So I decided I'll be keeping it simple. I will simply hem the end of the sleeves until I'm able to find the exact feathers that I want. And after doing that, this is what we have. This is what the dress is looking like. It came out so beautifully, honestly. Even without the feathers, it still looks really, really nice. If I find the feathers, I'm still going to add it to the sleeves because that's what I want. But you can leave yours as it is. You can see that it still looks okay. So yeah, we've come to the end of this tutorial. If you stayed all the way till the end, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you have any questions on this tutorial, you can leave it in the comment section and I'll respond to that. And yeah, I'll be seeing you in my next video.